sign creaking in the dry wind. The sound of an out-of-tune piano drifted through the open doors. He stepped inside, the hinges whining as the light shifted behind him. The smell of whiskey, sawdust, and sweat filled his lungs. "Whiskey," he said, his voice low and rough from the trail. The bartender, a thin man with restless eyes, poured a glass and slid it across the counter without a word. Caleb nodded and took a slow sip, feeling the burn trail down his throat. He just started to relax when trouble found him. A man's voice cut through the noise, loud, mean, and drunk. "You bring me another watered-down drink, girl, and I'll teach you a lesson you won't forget." Caleb turned his head slightly. The man was heavy-set, dressed better than most, with a gold chain across his vest and a cruel twist to his mouth. He had the wrist of a young woman locked tight in his grip. Her face was flushed, her dress plain but clean, and her eyes, dark and defiant, burned with anger she couldn't afford to show. "Mr. Hannigan, please," she said evenly. "The whiskey's the same as always. Perhaps you've had enough." Quote. Hannigan's answer came in the form of an open-handed slap that cracked through the room like a gunshot. She stumbled, catching herself on a nearby table. Every man in the saloon froze. Caleb set his drink down and turned fully toward them. The woman straightened, her cheek already reddening, her chin lifting with a courage that struck something deep inside him. She was beautiful, but not in a delicate way. There was steel in her spine, the kind only hardship could forge. "Now that," Caleb said quietly, "ain't no way to treat a lady." The room held its breath. Hannigan turned, eyes narrowing. "This ain't your concern, stranger. Go back to your drink." Caleb's tone stayed calm, almost lazy. Funny thing about that, I make it my concern when I see a man lay hands on a woman. Hannigan sneered. "You got no idea who I am." "Don't care much who you are," Caleb said. "You're the one who raised a hand to her, that's all I need to know." The silence stretched tight. Hannigan's hand hovered near his gun. Caleb's fingers twitched just above the grip of his Colt. But he didn't draw. He didn't have to. "You think you can talk to me like that?" Hannigan growled. Caleb's gray eyes met his without flinching. "I just did." In one motion, Hannigan reached for his weapon, but Caleb was faster. He moved like a striking snake, grabbing the man's wrist and twisting hard. Hannigan howled in pain as the gun clattered to the floor. Caleb seized him by the collar, spun him around, and shoved him toward the doors. Hannigan stumbled into the street, landing face first in the dust. "You'll regret this," he shouted from outside. Caleb didn't reply. He turned back to find every eye in the saloon on him. The woman stared too, one hand pressed to her cheek, her breath trembling but her posture still proud. "You all right, miss?" he asked. "I had it handled," she said, her voice soft but steady. "But thank you." Before he could say more, an older man came from behind the bar, wiping his hands on a rag. "Clara," he said, worry in his tone. "What in blazes happened?" "Nothing, Pa," she said quickly. "Just Hannigan being Hannigan." The man's gaze shifted to Caleb. "And who might you be?" "Caleb McGraw." "Just passing through." "Well, Mr. Just Passing Through," the older man said gruffly, "you just made an enemy of the richest man in this valley. Hannigan don't forgive easy." "Neither do I," Caleb replied quietly. Clara's father studied him, then nodded once. Fair warning given. He turned back to his work. Clara lingered a moment longer. Their eyes met again, and something unspoken passed between them. Gratitude, maybe? Curiosity? Or something deeper neither of them could name. She turned away, moving through the saloon with careful grace, serving drinks, and pretending nothing had happened. But Caleb saw the way she kept her back straight, her chin high, and how every man who looked at her seemed both drawn and wary. He finished his whiskey slowly, watching her. She moved like someone used to being watched, but not touched. Someone who'd learned to survive in a world that gave women few choices. Outside, the sun dipped lower, staining the sky red and gold. Inside, shadows stretched across the floorboards. Caleb should have left, should have ridden on before the night settled and trouble came looking for him. But something about this town and that woman held him like a hook in his chest. He didn't know yet that Dust Creek was about to change his life. Didn't know that behind those dark eyes burned the one thing he thought he'd lost forever. Hope. But the desert had a way of testing every man's heart. And for Caleb McGraw, that test had just begun. Wait, before we move on, what do you think about the story so far? The morning sun rose pale over Dust Creek, lighting the red hills in a thin wash of gold. The air already carried the promise of another burning day. Caleb McGraw stepped out of the small hotel and into the stillness. He'd slept little. Old memories had kept him company. The war, the wife and child he'd buried, and the quiet voice that asked what he was still searching for. He walked the main street, boots stirring small clouds of dust, until he reached the broken wheel. Tom Dawson, Clara's father, was hammering a notice to a post outside. The older man looked up, his expression cautious. "Mr. McGraw," he said, "didn't think you'd still be in town?" "Thought I might stay a few days," Caleb answered. "Heard you might know where a man could find work." Tom squinted, sizing him up. "You can handle a gun?" "When I have to. Stage company lost 2 guards last month. Apache raids north of here. Pays good if you've got the stomach for it." "I'll look into it." Tom hesitated, then said, "You seem like a decent man, so I'll give you a word of warning. Hannigan's got friends in high places. Sheriff Morrison among them. You'd be smart to steer clear of Clara. She's spoken for." Caleb's jaw tightened. "I didn't come looking for trouble, Mr. Dawson." "Trouble don't care if you came looking or not," Tom said grimly. Caleb nodded and walked off toward the stage office. He found the foreman, Will Patterson, a grizzled man with a limp and eyes sharp as nails. Within an hour, he was hired on. That afternoon, Caleb made his first run north, guarding a strongbox full of silver from the mines. The desert stretched around them like an ocean of red and gold, vast and unforgiving. The land was silent except for the jingle of harness and the creak of leather. "You from around here?" Patterson asked. "Nowhere in particular." The older man chuckled. "That's what most drifters say. You running from something or toward it?" Quote, Caleb didn't answer, but he thought of Clara's eyes, dark as midnight, full of courage and sadness. He was running toward something, though he didn't yet know what. When he returned to Dust Creek 3 days later, the first place he went was the saloon. Clara was there, carrying a tray of glasses. Their eyes met across the room, and time seemed to stop. She gave the smallest smile, one that reached her eyes this time, before turning to tend another customer. Caleb ordered a drink and took a seat in the corner. He wasn't sure what held him there, only that every time she moved, every time her copper hair caught the light, something inside him eased for the first time in years. Then the door swung open. Lucas Graves stepped inside, tall, well-dressed, and radiating power like a rattlesnake coiled in sunlight. His cold blue eyes swept the room until they found Clara. "Miss Dawson," he said with false warmth, "you're looking lovely as ever." Clara stiffened. "Mr. Graves, what can I get you?" "Just your company for a moment." He caught her wrist as she tried to pass, his smile all teeth. "You and I need to discuss our future." Caleb's fingers twitched on his glass, but Clara gave him the smallest shake of her head. "I'm working," she said evenly. "Perhaps another time." "There's going to come a day, Clara," Graves said softly, tightening his grip, "when you'll stop pretending you've got a choice. Your father's debts won't pay themselves." She wrenched her wrist free and walked away, her back straight, her steps quick. Graves watched her go, his expression darkening. Then he turned and left without another word. When the door shut behind him, Caleb motioned Clara over. "You all right?" "I'm fine." "He giving you trouble?" She gave a dry laugh. "Lucas Graves doesn't give trouble, he is trouble. Seems the kind that needs to be taught manners." "Don't," she said sharply. Then, softer, "Please, he owns half this town. The sheriff, the land, the debts. Even Pa owes him more than we can ever repay." "Debts can be paid," Caleb said. "Some things can't." She looked at him for a long moment. "You're not like the other men who pass through here." "How's that?" "They see what they want to see. A pretty face, a saloon girl. You see more than that. I don't know if that's good or bad. Guess we'll find out." The weeks passed, and the desert cooled as autumn crept in. Caleb rode guard on the stages, fought off a bandit once, and earned a reputation. Quiet, fast, and deadly when needed. In the evenings, he found himself at the broken wheel, drawn by the soft piano music and the woman behind the bar. He learned that Clara was 23, her mother long dead, her father a proud man broken by debt. He learned that she dreamed of seeing the ocean someday, and he learned that Lucas Graves meant to marry her, whether she wanted it or not. One evening, Clara found Caleb outside, sitting on the edge of the corral, staring at the stars. She approached quietly. "You keep coming back," she said. "Maybe I like the company. Or maybe you're too stubborn to leave." He smiled faintly. "Could be both." They sat in silence for a long time, the night filled with crickets and distant coyotes. "He'll force me," Clara said finally. "Lucas. He's already spoken to Pa, says it's the only way to settle the debts. You don't have to marry him." "What choice do I have?" "A woman alone in the territory doesn't last long." "There's always a choice," Caleb said quietly. She turned to him, eyes glistening in the moonlight. "Would you take me with you if I ran?" He hesitated, then nodded once. "Yes." She exhaled, half a sob, half a laugh. "You don't even know me." "I know enough. I know you're stronger than you think. And I know I'd rather face the desert with you than let that man cage you." "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you care what happens to me?" Caleb looked out at the horizon. "Because I'm tired of seeing good people crushed by bad ones. Because I've lost too much already, and maybe because you make me remember what it felt like to hope." She didn't speak, just looked at him as the night wind tugged her hair loose from its pins. Something passed between them then. Fragile, but alive, like the first green shoot after a long drought. "3 days," she said finally. "You leave after your next run. Meet me by the boulders at midnight. If I don't come, you'll come," he said. She looked at him one last time, then turned and walked back toward town, her figure framed by the silver light of the rising moon. Caleb watched her go, feeling the old emptiness inside him shift. For the first time in years, he had something to fight for, and something to lose. The storm rolled in fast that night, a hard desert rain that pounded the rooftops and turned the dust streets of Dust Creek into red mud. Thunder echoed through the valley as if the heavens themselves were restless. Inside the small room at the boarding house, Caleb McGraw paced, glancing at the clock again and again. Midnight had come and gone. Clara hadn't arrived. Something's wrong, he thought. He grabbed his coat and hat and stepped out into the downpour. The rain hit him like needles, soaking through his shirt in seconds. The streets were nearly empty, only a few lamps burning behind shuttered windows. He headed toward the saloon, boots splashing through puddles, his mind racing. When he pushed through the doors, the room was dark except for one lamp on the bar. Tom Dawson sat behind it, his face drawn and tired. "She ain't here, McGraw," Tom said quietly. "Where is she?" Tom hesitated. "Graves came this afternoon. Brought the sheriff with him, said your name like a curse, claimed you'd stolen from his ranch." Caleb's jaw clenched. "And Clara?" Tom's eyes dropped. "He's got her," said the wedding's tonight. The words hit like a bullet. "And you let him?" Tom slammed a fist against the counter. "You think I had a choice? He owns the debt on this place. The sheriff's on his payroll. If I'd fought, they'd have shot me where I stood." Caleb turned for the door. "Then I'll end it myself." "McGraw," Tom called after him. "He's expecting you." Caleb stopped, but didn't turn. Then he's in for a surprise. The Dawson house sat on the edge of town, lights glowing behind its curtained windows. Caleb approached from the back, moving through the shadows. His revolver felt heavy at his hip, his heartbeat steady, his mind cold. Inside, laughter drifted from the parlor. Lucas Graves's voice, smooth and cruel. Caleb crept closer to a window and looked in. Clara sat at the table, pale and still, in a white dress that wasn't her own. Her hands were folded in her lap, her eyes downcast. Graves stood beside her, his hand resting possessively on her shoulder. The sheriff lounged nearby, looking uneasy. "Soon to be Mrs. Graves," Lucas said smugly, raising his glass. "And tomorrow, Dust Creek will know she's mine." Clara didn't move, didn't blink, but when the lightning flashed outside, Caleb saw the faintest tremor in her fingers. He kicked the door open. The room exploded into motion. The sheriff went for his gun, but Caleb's shot dropped him before the barrel cleared leather. Graves spun, drawing his own pistol, but Clara acted first. She threw the lamp from the table, flames spilling across the floor as the glass shattered. Graves fired wild, the shot grazing Caleb's shoulder. Caleb lunged forward, grabbing the man's wrist and twisting hard. The gun flew free. Graves punched him, but Caleb barely felt it. Rage had taken over. They crashed against the wall, grappling, the smell of smoke thickening as the fire spread. "You should have stayed gone," Graves spat. Caleb slammed him back, fist connecting with his jaw. "You should have left her alone." Graves reached for a knife on the table. Clara shouted, "Caleb!" and he turned just in time to catch Graves's arm. The blade nicked his forearm, but Caleb forced it down, driving it into the floorboards. With a single motion, he swung his gun by the barrel and brought the handle down hard. Graves collapsed, blood darkening his fine shirt. Caleb turned to Clara. "You hurt?" quote. She shook her head, trembling. "No, but you're bleeding." "Later." He grabbed her hand. "We have to go." They stumbled out the back as the fire climbed higher. The rain did little to stop it. Flames roared through the house, lighting the night in orange and gold. Behind them, voices rose, men shouting, gunfire starting somewhere in the distance. They reached the livery, saddling their horses in frantic silence. Clara hesitated, looking back at the burning house. "Pa," she whispered. "He made his choice," Caleb said gently. "We can't save him if we stay." Tears streaked down her cheeks, mixing with the rain. "Then we ride." They rode hard into the dark, leaving Dust Creek behind. The thunder rolled across the desert, chasing them west toward the mountains. The rain turned to mist, the air cooling as dawn began to break. By the time the sun rose, Dust Creek was just a memory behind them. For 2 days they rode without stopping except to rest the horses. The desert gave way to rocky passes, then to the green edge of higher country. Caleb's wound reopened more than once, but he said nothing. Clara tore strips from her dress to bind it, her hands steady despite her fear. On the third night, they found shelter in a small cave. The wind outside was sharp and cold. Clara built a small fire while Caleb cleaned his arm with whiskey, his jaw clenched against the sting. "Let me help," she said softly. "I've had worse." "I know," she said, "but you don't have to do everything alone anymore." Her touch was gentle but sure as she cleaned and wrapped the wound. When she finished, their eyes met. The space between them felt charged, fragile. "Clara," he began, but she pressed a finger to his lips. "Don't," she whispered. "Not tonight." No promises, no regrets. Then she kissed him. It was a soft, trembling thing at first, the meeting of two souls who'd spent too long in the dark. But when he pulled her closer, when her hands came up to rest against his chest, the fire between them deepened into something fierce and tender all at once. Clara's breath hitched as he lifted her, setting her down on the bedroll beside the fire. His touch was reverent, tracing the bruises on her arms like he could erase them. "God, you're big," she whispered, wonder mixing with tears. He smiled, brushing her hair from her face. "And you're the bravest woman I ever met." Then he kissed her again, slow, certain, full of everything they'd both been too afraid to hope for. Outside, the wind howled across the rocks, but inside, the fire burned steady and warm. They came together like the storm and the desert, fierce, tender, and unstoppable. In that small cave, under a sky full of stars, two broken hearts found something whole again. When morning came, Clara woke with her head on Caleb's chest.